What's going on, fight fans? I'm back here with another video here set for you guys. Gonna be giving my reaction to UFC 312, the daunting card that I had a lot of things to be able to say that were very distasteful, but I gotta be honest where I gotta be honest. But with having those low expectations, came some decent, solid results. And starting that off, we had the banger of a start off, as you may say, a really nice start off. Not for Enchal Jubilee, who went against Quillen Salkillo, got absolutely rocked into another dimension with a nasty right hand. This fight was only 19 seconds, not really much to be able to say, but the Indian Jeet got planted off of his feet pretty easily. And, you could be able to contest the fight. Jubilee did when he got up. Didn't really say that. Well, he said, I was protesting, saying they did give me a chance to be able to fight, but he was clearly out on his feet. Moving on up the card, we had Jonathan McCaff versus Kevin Jusay. I was thinking, I didn't predict the fight. Honestly, I didn't predict the entirety of the card. But I thought Kevin Jusay was actually going to do something in this fight, seeing out of the last performance he had against Brian Battle, which was pretty impressive, even though he got TKO'd out of there. He still was very gritty and determined. Coming from that TKB camp and all the things and training partners that he's with, he's actually pretty decent. But Jonathan McCaff, something I didn't really expect out of him, which was very, very impressive. Even though he was kind of one dimensional, he kept throwing his rear kick, and that was pretty much his entire game plan. But it was very, very effective. He threw a lot to the body, really ripping it to Kevin Jusay. And you can obviously see in the picture that you're watching as of right now, his body was getting ripped and marked up nasty, his entire body pretty much. In that first round, especially when he got hit with that head kick, he dropped down. I thought he was damn nearly out, but he fought it off. Threw a nice right hand, that being Kevin Jusay, fought back a little bit. In the second round, it was pretty much of the same old, with Jonathan McCaff just throwing that rear kick, continuing to land it, and Kevin Jusay really kind of being worried about that. And in the third round, Kevin Jusay kind of marched his way along, kind of did what he needed to be able to do. He won the round, but still ended up losing the fight. So kind of a disappointing performance, in my opinion, by Kevin Jusay, because he could have been able to actually did something besides, worry about a rear kick coming his way. But I mean, it is what it is. Shout out to Jonathan McCaff. It was his UFC debut in his home country. Got the dub. Great story for him. And moving on up the card, we had Rong Zhu versus Cody Steele. Cody Steele, more known for his grappling, his BJJ and wrestling initiative that he usually likes to take in. But he stood up on the feet, had some decent time of training, and so did Rong Zhu. Rong Zhu, actually, they said on the commentary, has been training with TKB and Eugene Behrman and them boys, and his boxing was on a completely different level. Very, very crisp, very technical, and he just completely outbeat Cody Steele on the feet, even though Cody Steele was still very determined, showing a lot of grit, showing a lot of heart, still swinging a lot of shots, mostly hooks that were looking very disgusting to look at. But Rong Zhu was just there piecing him up. He took some punishment his way. He was able to actually assert his dominance, get away from the threat of the takedown, because the majority of the fight was actually on the stand up. And it was actually a pretty decent scrap between these two guys. It was actually pretty nice to be able to see, especially out of the last two fights that we had on this card, a pretty decent scrap. And it was all right. Shout out to Rong Zhu with the dub. Moving on up the card, we had Kobe Thickness versus Alexandre Topuria. And wow, we are in for a treat in the Bantamweight division. We got a Topuria twin, even though they aren't technically twins, but they're twins. The same exact style that we see out of Ilia Topuria in the featherweight division, we got the exact clone in the Bantamweight division. Alexandre is a literal, like, clone. He really is a clone. It is insane. Kobe Thickness had nothing really on the feet. He was very diverse, was fleet-footed, had good kicks here and there, but Topuria is just, really confident, really just in his mode, picked his spots very well, boxing, very crisp and technical. I love the head movement that he was been able to show and really just move out of the way of these attacks that Kobe Thickness was throwing. And once Alexandre was seeing those type of shots, he didn't really respect anything that was coming his way to Kobe, and he pretty much just dominated him. Hit him with a right hand that damn near dropped him. He also showed up some of his grappling chops and had a dominant third round with a lot of top control. So he showed a lot of versatility within his game, and man, he's going to be a problem. He may not have the same type of pop that Ilya does, that literal dead shot that he touches you once on the chin and you're out. But he got some power in his hands. He has great grappling, great takedown defense, has also great offensive wrestling and grappling, and his boxing. And actually, another thing that was actually really good in his performance was his low kicks. I think he throws a lot more low kicks than what Topuria does. Both of them really don't throw kicks at all. Really, the majority of their offense is boxing based, but a lot more low kicks out of Alexandre, which was very, very impressive for me to be able to see. And he's going to be a damn problem. Moving on up the card, we had Wayne Kang versus Bruna Brazil in a WMMA fight that was actually pretty decent. Bruna Brazil in the first round, I think she did pretty well, especially with the low kicks. She was chopping Wayne Kang down there. Wayne Kang had a little bit of problems. He showed a little bit of bruising, especially on her calf. So it created a little bit of problems. So on the feet, it was actually kind of like stalemated. It was really even, as you may see. But towards the second round, Wang Kang just started to get her confidence, started to let go of those combinations, especially with the boxing and kickboxing as well. She's also very well with her kicks. And Bruna Brazil just completely just like aborted mission on her goal to be able to, beat Wang Kong. She just looked mentally checked out, especially in that third round too. She looked like she didn't even really want to be in there. There was times here and there she would counter her with a nice right hand over the top, but the majority of the time Wang Kong was pressing on, getting the action to where she needs to be. She gets a really nice bounce back win in her ways, especially coming off that submission loss recently. I think the first loss in her career. So good bounce back win for Wayne Kong. And Bruno Brazil got some things to be able to think about. But moving on up the card, we had Tom Nolan versus Vyacheslav Borshev. My guy Vyacheslav, I thought he was going to be able to outpoint Tom Nolan, but Tom Nolan, especially on the onset in that first round, was on fire. The kick game, the pace that he was able to set in that match against Vyacheslav was just on another level compared to what Borshev was trying to get into. Borshev, he did have his success, especially with his kickboxing and his boxing as well. But in that first round, Tom Nolan gets that takedown, threatens with the submission with the arm in triangle twice. Obviously, you give him the first round, especially I think he definitely outpointed Vyacheslav. And in the second round, I think Vyacheslav had a lot more success on the stand-up. He did a lot more, even though Tom Nolan was still doing his thing, but he was making Tom miss a lot more. But then he did get the takedown towards the end of the round for Tom Nolan. And then after, they stand up for like 45 seconds, and Tom Nolan is outpointing Vyacheslav, so I understand why the judges probably gave that round to Tom Nolan, excuse me. But I thought Borshev actually had a better second round. Or did more work overall in the second round compared to Tom Nolan. And in the third round, it's pretty much kind of the same of what it was in the second round, where Vyacheslav was having more success on the feet than Tom Nolan, even though Tom Nolan was keeping it very close and competitive. But then, Tom Nolan is like kind of staying on the ground. He's getting kicked to his legs, and there's some top control for Vyacheslav. He gets some ground and pound in, even though Tom Nolan is actually having a lot of success from his back with the elbows, with the up kicks as well. Had a really nice technique with coming up and kicking Vyacheslav in the face. So Tom Nolan gets the dub. I'm not mad that he gets the dub. I didn't think that he did not win, but there was one scorecard that was like 30-27, what I thought was atrocious, because I think the third round was for sure for Borshev, first round for sure for Tom Nolan. And I can see especially how, even though I thought Borshev got the better of the second round, especially for like the first 3 to 4 minutes, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, you may say. And then Tom Nolan just got the takedown, and then after that, he just did better than him in the second round, even though he kept it close and competitive throughout it most. So shout out to Tom Nolan. He actually got a really close and competitive win against a very good kickboxer in terms of Borshev. He had a lot of success in this fight, but he just came up short in this one. And moving on up the card to the headliner of the prelims, we had Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. An absolute drama fest between these two guys in the first round in the stand-up. It's very, very close and competitive. I think Jack Jenkins is having more success compared to Gabriel Santos. And then your boy Jack Jenkins lands this nasty head kick over the top through the guard of Gabriel Santos, sits Santos down, and Santos is in a world of trouble. Get some ground and pound for Jack Jenkins in there. And then all of a sudden, throughout all the chaos, Gabriel Santos throws up this triangle choke, has it in cinched in for maybe like more than 30 seconds, tries to be able to get in the arm bar in as well. But somehow, someway, Jack Jenkins, with the wherewithal, with the toughness and the heart and determination, is somehow to be able to get out of that dangerous choke that Gabriel Santos in the Chuta Box camp is in, especially working with Charles Oliveira on the ground. I mean, that's absolutely insane that he was able to get out of that. But then towards the end of that first round, then Gabriel Santos gets a takedown, gets some top control, gets some ground and pound, but overall, you would say the round goes to Jack Jenkins. Into the second round, Gabriel Santos gets a takedown after some, spurts of on the feet, especially towards the beginning of that round where it was pretty even. But then again, Gabriel Santos gets that takedown, gets the top control, and pretty much is doing whatever he wants to do. And then you move into the third round. Again, you get more exchanges, more combinations between these two guys where it's even on the feet, but then it goes to the ground. And this man who's an absolute tear as of right now in the featherweight division, Gabriel Santos, gets the back, gets the cinch in on the rear naked choke, a nasty choke that Jenkins is not able to get out from the choke, especially that he get earlier in the first round. So Gabriel Santos gets the job done and gets a very, very good submission win on his resume, especially over Jack Jenkins as well. And moving on to the main card, we had the starter of Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. Again, I've talked about it in my prediction video. Going in and seeing these three fights, especially to start off this main card, you kind of just wanted it to either be a banger or a knockout, something quick and out of there. And Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado was neither of them, but it was a decent scrap. It was an okay fight. Jake Matthews was doing his thing throughout the entirety of this fight, especially with the boxing and the counter punching. He really just outpointed Francisco Prado on the feet, where Prado was having some success here and there with the kickboxing. Especially his low kicks were actually pretty decent, and especially some hook counters. These guys were throwing heat between each other, trying to take each other's chins off of each other's face. But again, throughout it all, no real grappling, and Jake Matthews just got the job done with his boxing and just completely outpointed Francisco Prado on the feet, who was game. He was game. He definitely took a lot of punishment, especially in this fight. But yeah, moving on up the card, we had Jimmy Crute versus Rodolfo Bellato, which was another decent, semi-okay fight between these two guys. Jimmy Crute and Rodolfo Bellato was pretty okay, especially on the feet. I think Jimmy was doing a lot better on the early go-round, pretty just much doing what he wanted to do on the feet with Rodolfo. Then in terms of that, Rodolfo tries to be able to get a takedown, but Jimmy Crute gets on top, gets the top control, has a dominant ground and pound round over Rodolfo, really just beating the hell out of him on the ground. They get up towards the end of the first round, and while they do get up, Jimmy Crute lands this nice right hook through the guard of Rodolfo Bellato, gets Rodolfo on the stanky leg, gets him on the ground, damn near puts him out through that first round, but Rodolfo survives it, goes into the second round, and you just start to see Jimmy Crute just fade, man. He just started to fade. He didn't have what he had, especially in the first round. And in the second round, Rodolfo Bellato just had more and more success, just killing the low kicks were killing Jimmy Crute, just damaging and battering his leg. You started to see eventually over time Jimmy Crute was starting to get real limp on that leg, or started to switch his stance to not be able to deal with those low kicks anymore. And Rodolfo was actually getting hit with a lot of good shots as well. Jimmy Crute was still doing his thing with the boxing and landing some nice jabs and straight down the pipe. But in my opinion, Rodolfo Bolotto had more success, was starting to mix up his shots, landing with a lot of nice hooks to the body, jabs and straights to the body, the low kicks that I was mentioning as well, and shots upstairs to really just have Jimmy Crute off balance and not really know what's going to be able to happen. And in the third round, it was pretty much the same. These guys were already gassed and tired out of there. They really didn't have much to be able to put out there, but Rodolfo Bolotto was getting the better of the exchanges, was getting more output out there, and was damaging Jimmy Crute throughout that entire third round. But since it was a 10-8 first round, it goes to a draw, because I kind of had it the same way. If you're going to score the 10-8 round for Jimmy Crute in the first, I do think that Rodolfo had a better second and third round, so it would go to him, so it would go to a draw. So unfortunately for these guys, nobody is a winner, but it kind of is what it is, especially when you put Jimmy Crute on the main card. What do you expect is going to happen? Anyways, whatever. Moving on to the future fight on this card, we had Talison Textera versus Justin Tafa. Talison making his UFC debut in the heavyweight division, going against Justin Tafa, a known kickboxer who's really, really good on the stand-up and has a lot of power. Actually, he's not really good, but he has a lot of power in his hands, and he's able to really put your ass out if he's able to touch you. And this fight ends very, very quickly, similar to the opener of this card. Talison Textera, one thing that I will give him a lot of credit for is that he threw a head kick to Justin Tafa that was absolutely insanely quick, especially for that guy at that size and that heavyweight. That is very, very impressive, my man. And while that does happen, it kind of not stuns Justin Tafa, but kind of like shocks him, like, oh my God, this dude is that quick at this size. Goes for the underhand goes for a double leg takedown on Justin Tafa. Tafa has good takedown defense for the moment. Goes to the cage, and while in an exchange, Talison Textera lands this disgusting elbow right on the nose and in potentially to the eye of Justin Tafa. Tafa crumbles to the ground like a submissive boy that he is, and then has the admitted gall to be able to protest and say, you didn't even let me fight out of it. Like, ref, what are you doing, man? Ref, how can you be able to stop the fight after I just went to the ground, after I just got elbowed to the face and I'm covering up and I can't even be able to defend myself? Like, how can you not be able to let me continue fight? I mean, this guy was ready for him to get soccer kicked into the face or something, left unconscious on the mat. I don't know what he wants to be able to do. I don't know what he wants the referee to do. The referee did his job. This is not controversial at all. You got hit with a disgusting elbow, my man, and you went out like a light. Well, you didn't go out like a light, but you went out like a bitch. And that's pretty much what it was for that. Shout out to Talison Textera in his UFC debut in another man's hometown. Gets a nice KO win. Now moving on to the co-main event, we had Tatiana Suarez versus Zhang Weili, and Zhang Weili is still her. She is her. She is what every single WMMA fighter is striving to be as of right now. In terms of her being the most versatile, the most well-rounded MMA, WMMA fighter as of right now, she is leaps and bounds ahead of every single woman in any division, that being in the WMMA. In the first round, Tatiana Suarez, the quote-unquote Khabib, the quote-unquote absolute mauler, American wrestling maestro or maestra that she is on another level in terms of the grappling, wrestling, and everything dealing with that. She gets a takedown in the first round against Zhang Weili in the middle of the octagon, which was very, very beneficial for her. Gets a lot of top control, but doesn't really do anything with it in terms of damage. Then they get a little stand-up exchange. Zhang Weili then gets Actually, no, I think Zhang Weili then turns it and gets herself some top control, does a little bit of damage herself, does some work. And then from there, it was just there to be able to see throughout the entirety of the fight. And I'm glad that we were able to see it because I did not want Tatiana Suarez to be the champion, especially after seeing this performance out of her. Disgusting. Just like failing takedowns over and over and over and over because that's literally your saving grace. I understand that is your bread and butter, but you're an MMA fighter. You're supposed to be well rounded. You're supposed to be well versed in terms of the striking, in terms of having some type of stand up game. Understandably so, you're absolutely tremendous in terms of submissions, grappling, and wrestling. But if you got no stand up game to be able to complement that, things like this happen and you get exposed. Once Zhang Weili is able to shuck off takedowns and able to implement her game plan and show the speed and the ability that she was, especially in her younger age, of being a WMMA fighter, which she was known more of as a striker, but over the years she started to develop her game, something that you should be able to look into Tatiana Suarez, especially off of this loss. Um, she started to work a lot more on her grappling, work a lot more on her wrestling, get more well versed, get more experience, start actually showcasing that in her fights, being a lot more dominant with the grappling, being a lot more inclusive, and actually showing that yes, I can be a well-rounded MMA fighter, not just a great striker. And that's exactly what she did to Tatiana Suarez in that second round. Again, you can see once she's stuffing all these takedowns by Tatiana Suarez, she then just really doing whatever she did on the feet. Way too fast on the feet for Tatiana Suarez. Made Tatiana look like an absolute robot out there. Like AI. She didn't really know what the hell to do out of there. And Zhang Weili, man, in that third round, lands this cracking right hand right on the chin of Tatiana Suarez. Credit where credit is due. Tatiana Suarez is one tough gal, is able to take a punch because she got hurt many times in this fight, and she just got dominated, controlled. Where a lot of people thought that she usually does that to a lot of other women fighters, and a lot of people thought that she was going to do that, especially coming in as a heavy favorite over Zhang Weili. She just got dominated in her own realm because in the fourth and the fifth round, Zhang Weili gets takedowns, she gets top control, she has the ground and pound, and she shows her dominance and how she is, as of right now, the best WMMA fighter on the feet, on the ground. She's able to do whatever she's able to need to do, and she completely outclassed Tatiana Suarez. Again, cracking her on the feet so many times with the hands, and Tatiana Suarez had no answers. She was there just flailing and failing takedowns all over the octagon, and it was an absolute joy to be able to see that. Get some damn stand-up game in your bag. Get it in, because if not, you're just gonna be this one-dimensional Khabib, the woman Khabib of the UFC. Thank God, thank God that you just got dominated like you did. But Zhang Weili, the pound for pound number one woman MMA fighter in the world, and well deserved, well deserved by Zhang Weili. She had an absolutely amazing 10 out of 10 performance by her. And moving on to the main event, we had Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, the rematch, and was the only fight that I actually predicted in my prediction video that I made. And I had Dricus du Plessis defeating Sean Strickland and getting him out of there and knocking him out. And that's easier said than done because, damn, Sean Strickland is hard to get out of there. He really is. You got to have that death touch like an Alex Pereira to be able to touch his chin and to be able to get him out of there. Because, yes, Dricus du Plessis does have a lot of power, but he doesn't have that touch like an Alex Pereira. But with that being said, though, a lot of trash talk. I'm going to start off with this. A lot of trash talk was talked about Sean Strickland, about him being a way better striker in another realm, in another tier, on another level compared to Dricus du Plessis. Him calling him out and having that challenge to him to, hey, just let's have this pack together and let's just bang and bang, let's just swing with each other. No grappling, no wrestling. And Dricus du Plessis, the man with the plan, Mr. DDP, he put it on him. He completely outstruck Sean Strickland, the quote unquote best defensive fighter in the UFC, the defensive wizard with the Philly shell, a unorthodox type of defensive style in the UFC game and MMA, never really seen before, and is really hard to be able to touch, and is really hard to be able to get through that type of defense to be able to hit him and hit him clean. And Dricus du Plessis just completely neutralized Sean Strickland, and he actually proved that he is on another level, is on another realm, in another stratosphere compared to Sean Strickland. And usually we get the sloppy style, the just swinging like he's never swung a punch before type of Dricus du Plessis type of performance. And we still got some of that here and there. But really, we got a lot more of a technical technique placement wise Dricus du Plessis that was really, really nice to be able to see. And his kicking game was absolutely chef kiss beautiful. It was really, really good. You can just see it from the onset that Dricus du Plessis, coming off of that first fight that they had against each other, was kind of really patient and kind of taking his time and trying to pace himself. He set the pace in this fight from the onset. He made and dictated this fight throughout the entirety of how long it went. And he did really whatever he really wanted to Sean Strickland, really messing up Sean Strickland with the kick game, really having those head kicks come over and barely graze him, and then eventually in the fight, later in the fight, eventually touch him and hit him hard towards the head. Shout out to Sean Strickland showing off that chin. But having the outside low kick, just continuously throwing it, the inside low kick, the body kick, moving in the southpaw position. Just Dricus du Plessis was so freaking busy with the kicks, just keeping Sean Strickland guessing and having him think about what's going to come back his way and having him worried about the power as well. You know, I can be able to go round by round through this fight, but there's no real need. Really, just me having my thoughts to be able to tell you what happened is really what really happened in the fight. Dricus du Plessis attempted one takedown, got the takedown, and had no control at all. He just really got the takedown, and I guess just to prove himself that he can be able to get a takedown. But besides that, there was no grappling, there was no wrestling, there was no anything, regardless of what Tatiana Suarez wanted to do in her fight against Zhang Weili. Dricus du Plessis kept it on the feet, kept the pack with Sean Strickland, and delivered multiple times. A lot of people, especially in the crowd, booing, saying it was a boring fight. That's all due to Sean Strickland, because Sean Strickland was completely neutralized. He was not able to be able to throw the way that he wanted to be able to throw, especially with the way that his coaches want to be able to tell him to do so, because he couldn't. He couldn't be able to do it. He was just, instead of him being, reactionary to everything, he was just thinking about what was coming his way and trying to be still defensively responsible, but eventually it just got overwhelmed by Dricus du Plessis and what he was able to implement in his game plan, and really just, in my honest opinion, 5-0 Sean Strickland and completely dominate him and expose him as the defensive wizard fraud that he is. It takes fighters like a Dricus du Plessis to be able to fight a Sean Strickland, and you really are able to see what you're able to do if you press the type of pace that Dricus du Plessis is able to push against a Sean Strickland. Shout out to the gas tank of Dricus du Plessis. In the fourth round, though, I will add and will mention it was the only real time that there was any type of hurt fighter. You had Dricus du Plessis hit Sean Strickland right on the nose, really hurting Sean Strickland, having him moving back, having him worried, and really just moving all around so that way he couldn't be able to get knocked out or get hit on the nose once again, because that would have been painful as hell. But besides that, throughout the entirety of the fight, Dricus du Plessis set out what he wanted to do, and that's shut the haters out. Stop having all this talk about it being such a close fight, and show that he's on a completely different level compared to Sean Strickland. You had Alex Pereira in the corner for Sean Strickland. I think Alex Pereira is going to fight Magomed Ankalaev UFC 13, which is next month. Thankfully, we're able to see Alex Pereira that quick. Um, and while he called him out. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Alex is going to move back to 185. Neither do I think DDP is going to be able to just jump to 205 real quick. I think the next fight, obviously, even though Amavov is coming off his impressive performance against Israel Adesanya and should rightfully be so the number one contender, we're going to get Hamza Chimaev versus DDP, which is an absolute banger that we need to see in the middleweight division. I really, really, really want to be able to see that fight. I think that's one of the best fights to make and one of the most necessary fights to make as of this year. We need Hamzat versus DDP. I 100% am backing that fight. 100% want to be able to see that fight. And honestly, the way that Dricus is looking as of right now, I'm actually favoring him in that fight because, man, it's awesome. I just want to be able to see it already. And before I even and conclude this breakdown, Dricus du Plessis, his hands were absolutely great too as well. Having the straights to the body, the jab as well. Obviously, again, you still had the sloppy shots with the hooks overall going to the head, but they still were landing on Sean Strickland, exposing him again as a defensive fraud that he is. But that is the video, guys. Like this video. If you obviously like this video, comment your opinions on how you saw UFC 312. Did you enjoy it? Even though the main card didn't really have any names of note towards the co-main and main event. And subscribe, UFC fans. Subscribe, MMA fans. I'm here this entire year, the next year, the year after. So that means I'm here for you throughout the entire year. Consistency is key, and that's what I'm here bringing you. So why don't you give me some consistency back, baby, and give me that subscribe. Yes, 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 yes. You want it, and I want it too. Anyways, thank you guys again for watching again. We'll be back next week, and peace.